building up and managing an unstoppable mercenary company, fighting off epic knights, wild bears, and even grueling monsters, and mastering professions from blacksmithing and fishing to alchemy and thievery. Today I played one of the most strategic medieval open world tactical RPGs out there. I played 100 Days of Wartales. And that's where everything began. A small group of mercenaries with no idea what was coming. Gylard, the natural-born leader. Ella, the deadly huntress. Vladwin, the silent assassin. Melric, the unbreakable tank. And of course, Prince, the horse. I found my party in the center of a valley. There happened to be some bandits blocking the only way out of it. This was going to be our very first battle as a unified mercenary group. But before I ran over to them, I went and collected some flowers, and then checked out my camp. It appeared that we had a campfire and a workshop, and that was it. I checked out Gylard's stats. There were quite a lot of them, and I could also see his inventory. That was when I interacted with the camp workshop. I needed to assign somebody the tinkerer profession in order to be able to use it. After some careful consideration, I ended up assigning it to Melric, and then saw what I was able to craft. Currently, nothing, but I did see that I would be able to make torches, lockpicks, fishing hooks, as well as some other things, including camping gear. I came across some buttons in the bottom right corner of my screen. The chest was to open my inventory, the map opened a world map, the book a compendium, and the trophy different challenges and paths that I could take. In the moment, I didn't know what the compendium was, so I kinda just sent my party to go collect some iron and got attacked by those blocking bandits. We'll worry about the compendium later. Only 2 bandits were attacking us, and it appeared from the bottom left corner of the screen that we had the first 2 turns. I sent Gylard out to attack the first bandit with his cleave ability. This was an area of effect, or AoE, that was supposed to deal around 7 damage. Once I attacked with Gylard, he was now engaged with the enemy, and the enemy was engaged with him. The only way to get out of this engagement was to either kill the enemy or disengage, allowing the enemy to attack me once for free. For the next move, I chose Vladwin, and I sent him directly behind the same enemy that Gylard engaged. I used Vladwin's stab ability, which got a critical hit. This was likely due to me attacking an already engaged enemy. Apparently, your critical hit chance increases by a significant amount. It was finally the bandit's turn. The one bandit closest to all of my troops attacked Gylard back, and he ended up poisoning Gylard. It was now my turn again, and I sent Melric over to surround the enemy. This provided even more bonuses for my allies nearby. I then had Melric use his pound ability, which ended up taking out the bandit. It was now Ella's turn. I moved her into range of the other enemy bandit, who also happened to be an archer, and then shot him with an arrow. He proceeded to shoot Ella back with an arrow, but his knocked her back a couple spaces. A new round started because every single unit on the field had taken a turn. My first move was to get Ella her revenge by shooting another arrow at the enemy. I then moved Vladwin in a little bit closer, but he wasn't able to make it all the way over to the enemy archer. That was until I used his run ability, and then I attacked, taking out the last bandit. We got some decent loot from the encounter, 18 crowns, the currency of the land, and a new dagger. I could also take the bandits' corpses for whatever reason. I don't know why you'd want those. Real quick, if you're enjoying the video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for more. If you want to get more involved in the Vortide community, check out the Discord linked down below. I noticed that Melric leveled up. I could now choose to increase some of his stats and choose a specialization for him. I chose the Destroyer class, which allowed him to wear heavy armor and gave him a new ability called Weakening Blow. This skill applied weakening on the enemy that I attacked with it, reducing their damage by 50% and also dealing 4 to 5 damage. I then increased his constitution, which increased his health and carrying capacity. Oh yeah, and each mercenary's armor can break during the battle. So I had to repair Ella and Gylard's armor, as it got damaged from being attacked. There were quite a few stats in the top right corner: happiness, influence, valor points, food, and crowns. Those were pretty self-explanatory. On the top left, I had suspicion, question marks, knowledge, and then my mercenary group. Apparently, if the group became too unhappy, companions could leave. Each companion also had a unique relationship with every other one. Since I now had the basics figured out, I decided that it was time to finally embark on our adventure. After grabbing that iron, of course. The first building that I came across was the Plateau Stables. I entered in and it looked like there were quite a few horses for sale, which made sense. I could even inspect each horse and choose to adopt them if I wanted. It was pretty cool that each horse inside the stable was unique and had its own unique stats. I talked to Avise, one of the people who worked here. She basically begged me to take any horses that I could adopt. I then talked to Markaner, the guy who owned the stables. He was selling horseshoes and basically guaranteed me a free horseshoe if I bought a horse. I didn't have any intention of buying another horse right now since I didn't need one, so I headed out. I followed the road from the stables northwest and I came across the village of Stormcap. There appeared to be quite a few buildings here: an inn, an apothecary, a tavern, a market, a town hall, and a forge. I of course checked out the town hall first. That's where I came across Lady Meotres Gontrande.
I'll have you know that we do not take kindly to refugees in these parts.
She basically told me that their region had been overrun with a bunch of refugees, and they were causing a lot of problems. She basically ended up asking me to help fend off the refugees and keep the land safe. I then went into the forge and assigned Vladwin the blacksmith profession. I currently couldn't forge anything, so I checked out what I could potentially forge and then talked to the master blacksmith, Hulan.
My anvil. I can also repair your armor. Oh, and I'm looking to hire a skilled blacksmith, if you happen to know one.
He was overall pretty nice and told me that I could use his anvil. I then checked out the market.
Please, can you spare some food?
Some lady was begging for food there, but I didn't really have much of my own, especially for 4 people. So I just kind of ignored her and checked out the other 2 vendors inside the market. The meat vendor, Deal, told me that the refugees had been stealing stuff from him. It seemed like the marketplace wasn't doing very well, to say the least. I then headed over to the inn. There seemed to be a lot of people hanging out in there, which made sense. The emissary, Dodetrix, had offered me a bunch of tasks in exchange for crowns. It seemed like a lot of these were basically just taking out bandits and other groups that pretty much had bounties on them. I accepted a contract to go take out a bunch of bandits who were attacking caravans on a specific road. After that, I talked to an informant. Apparently, I could buy a bunch of information from him that led to the best jobs in the region. In other words, these were the jobs that allowed me to progress with the storyline in this region. I didn't know that at the time though. There were also 2 potential recruits that I talked to in the tavern. The first one used a pitchfork, and the other a giant axe. It didn't seem like a good idea to recruit another companion right now though. I then made my way over to the apothecary, and assigned Ella the profession of alchemist. Let's just say there were some interesting things that she could make, including medicine. After that, I checked out what the shop owner was selling. She apparently could heal any companion that was sick or injured as well. Finally, I made my way over to the tavern, and it was completely empty. But I found a guy named Lunk in there. He pretty much told me that I could buy the tavern and run it. Sadly enough, there was no way I could possibly do this right now. I didn't have enough crowns. I then opened up the compendium because it said that I had learned 1 knowledge point. There were quite a few different things that I could use that knowledge point on to learn. I ended up spending it on rationing, as this allowed my troops to eat 3 less food every single day. I left the village, but I didn't make it far, because I came across a caravan. The caravan really wasn't carrying too much in it, and there wasn't anything that I wanted to urgently buy, but I saw that I could attack it. This would increase my suspicion level though, making me wanted. After that, I came across a fishing spot, which I kind of just ignored for now since I didn't have an angler. I really wanted to go and take out that bandit group that was taking out the caravans on the road. So I located it on my map and headed over to the road. On my way over, I collected some wood, and then I came across some drunken refugee hunters. One of them was so drunk that he was facing the other way. These two seemed like they were going to be super easy to take out, so I decided to attack them. The battle started off with me sending Gaillard in between the two enemies. I was hoping that his AoE was able to reach both of them. Unfortunately, it wasn't, so I had to move closer to one and then attack. The drunken refugee hunters retaliated, and they attacked Gaillard. That was when I sent Melric over to stop the next bandit from being able to attack Gaillard. I didn't want him to get ambushed while he was currently engaged. I used the new weakening blow ability that Melric had gotten. This should make the bandit hit a lot less hard. I then used Melric's normal ability and smacked the bandit with his club. It was now Vladwin's turn. I sent him in to do what he does best, ambush. Melric took only 3 damage from the enemy bandit. Things are about to get awkward for them. The next round flew by. It wasn't long until Ella finished off the first enemy bandit. Right after she did, the round ended, and it was now her turn once again. She finished off the second bandit with ease, and unlocked a new trait. The loot wasn't half bad. I got a Gambeson, which is medium armor, that had 8 guard and 9 armor. I got a couple other things, but left the corpses alone, obviously. That's when I selected a specialization for Vladwin. He definitely deserved it, after pulling off that successful ambush. I ended up choosing Valorous Audacity. This granted 1 Valor point each time that Vladwin ended his turn next to an enemy and wasn't engaged in combat. I then upgraded his dexterity by 1, which increased the damage from his abilities. I gave the new armor that I had just looted to Melric. I wanted to make sure that he had the most defense as he was our tank, and I was going to be sending him in a lot. My journey then continued as I made my way over to the road where the Caravan bandits were hanging out. I stumbled upon the Tiltren jail. There's never a good reason to go to jail, so I just avoided it for now and headed off into the forest. I made it out of the forest to the other side, and then headed over to pick up some iron and flowers. While doing so, I noticed something shining in the middle of the forest. This piqued my interest, so I headed back in, which was a mistake. 2 boars started chasing me right out of that same forest. There wasn't much that I could do, so I had to fight them off. Otherwise, they were gonna eat my companions. My first move was to send Ella up and attack at a distance. I then sent Gaillard in between the 2 boars, and had him use his cleave AoE attack. I tried to retreat Gaillard back a little bit before the first boar got to attack. This didn't really do too much. Melric wasn't able to reach the enemy boar. Luckily enough, Vladwin was able to run right behind him on his turn. The second boar headed over to Vladwin. It attacked, doing 4 damage. This doesn't sound like a lot, but it was basically all of Vladwin's armor. He, on the other hand, hit a 12 on the boar, killing it. I made my repairs and then looted a bunch of meat and animal parts. Ella had also leveled up from that fight, so I increased her dexterity, and then chose a specialization. I went with Valorous Victory. This gave 1 Valor point for each enemy that Ella took out. I could now finally go into the forest and collect the resources that I first saw. Right as I arrived, my group was completely fatigued. We had to set up camp for the night. For each rest, I have to have enough food for every single companion. It honestly was a good thing that we were attacked by boars, because I got a whole bunch of extra meat that I didn't have before. We were basically set on food for the next 6 days because of it. As the rest came to an end, my companions were pretty happy. We also gained 2 extra Valor points. Since I was already in the camp, I decided that I should have Melric start crafting some stuff. So I made him craft a lockpick. He then made a fishing hook, so I could actually go fishing the next time we find a fishing spot. I still didn't have the materials to craft any new camping gear, sadly. so I made it my goal to try and get them as soon as possible. I noticed that I had gained a knowledge point from the first rest. I ended up spending it on run. This ability was pretty self-explanatory, but it allowed me to run on the actual campaign map, which was pretty awesome. Funny enough, I actually unlocked more than one knowledge point. This allowed me to pick another basic knowledge. I chose frugality, which decreased my companion's wages by 10%. Since I now had a fishing hook, I decided to try out the fishing spot nearby. It honestly wasn't too bad. I just needed to keep the little fishing meter in the center black area. I was able to successfully catch a carp. There appeared to be 2 more fish in this spot though. They were a perch and pike. Of course, I caught both of them. After, I continued my journey to try and find those caravan bandits. Funny enough though, I went the wrong way. I went up a little mountainside and came across an abandoned tower. There was a man just sitting in it. There was also some hemp, which I collected.
Untie me. I'm no danger to anyone. They're after me because I deserted.
Weirdly enough, the man was chained to the ground. He said that he was chained up here because he deserted something. Unlucky for him, none of my companions are thieves. I felt kinda bad, but I ended up just leaving him there, and then proceeded back down the mountain. When I made it to the nearest road, I saw 2 caravans crossing by. There was also one that was completely destroyed. This must have been the work of the caravan bandits. As I was walking down the road, it was them. They ambushed me from the forest. It turned out that the bandit group was actually just some desperate refugees. But still, what they were doing was wrong. Time to take these guys out. My mercenaries made light work of them. Gylard was now able to level up, so I increased his constitution, which pretty much increases health and carrying capacity. I then selected the Protector specialization. The refugees then begged for mercy. Unfortunately for them, I had a duty to fulfill. I now had 210 crowns waiting for me as I took out the caravan bandits. I just needed to head to Stormcap and collect. Before doing so though, I figured that since I was already this far out here, I might as well go around and explore. I came across a nearby farm, which presented me with a very big dilemma. The farm owner had been infected by a rat plague. Him and his wife both wanted me to execute him. But the thing is, he didn't do anything wrong, or deserve it. I decided to just let the situation unwind by itself. I appeared to have completed a challenge in the Mysteries and Wisdom challenge path. It was to discover 5 locations, which was pretty easy. I then crafted a cooking pot for the camp. I placed it down in between the workshop and Prince. Now we just needed a designated cook. I changed Ella's profession from alchemist to cook because she had no experience doing any alchemy yet, so her profession was still pretty flexible. Unfortunately, we didn't have the ingredients to be able to cook anything anyways. What I did have though was a knowledge point, which I spent on endurance training, increasing my party's movement speed by 5%. Right after that, 3 boars charged at us passing by a forest. My companions made light work of them, and we were back on the road. There appeared to be some guards attacking some bandits in the forest. I was intrigued and wanted to check things out, so I headed over, and the guards asked for help. I kind of figured why not, especially considering it was 1 guard versus multiple bandits. I have no clue what Captain Rainram would have done if we weren't here to help. He clearly was outnumbered, and honestly didn't seem like he stood a chance against these 2 bandits. Funny enough, after we took out one of them, the other bandit was trying to flee. I had the choice between letting him and hunting him down. When I made my decision to keep fighting, for some reason Captain Rainram ran over a bear trap. I don't know what he was thinking. Anyways, I continued my attack on the bandit. At this point I was under the impression that if I didn't take out all of the enemies, I would get less loot. Of course, I wasn't gonna risk that. After the fight, I realized that my troops were completely fatigued. It was time to eat and rest for the night. Oh yeah, and level up Prince's movement skill. Everyone was happy and well rested. When I headed out for the day, there appeared to be a whole bunch of activity on the road that we were traveling on. And I came across a guard outpost. Before checking it out, I talked to one of the nearby caravans. I sold off one of my fish and then an extra knife that I had. I then entered the guard outpost.
To think that we have to camp out here because of some pig-headed bandit.
I met Captain Rovand, and he told me that there were some bandits hiding in a cave nearby. That was the whole point why they set up this guard outpost. I decided to go help them out and flush out the cave. When I made it inside, I met Berthram. He basically told me that they didn't have any food and they needed to raid villages to get food. He made me an offer. He would pay me what Captain Rovand was gonna pay me if I went back out and attacked Rovand instead. Since we were working with bandits here, I didn't trust them. I ended up attacking Bertham and his gang of bandits right on the spot. My first move was to send Melric in and deal damage to one of their assassins. Another bandit assassin attacked from the side of Melric and pretty much ambushed him. I think that was Bertham himself. I then moved Ella in to attack the same bandit I initially attacked with Melric. And then I used Vladwin to ambush the ambusher. When it was finally Guylard's turn, I had him in kind of an awkward situation. Since he had an AoE, I had to make sure that I was swinging at the enemy and the enemy only. I didn't want to do any team damage. During the middle of the fight, a part of the cave started to collapse, and a whole bunch of rocks fell down. I think that scared both us and the enemies. When I attacked with Ella again, she accidentally missed the enemy and hit Melric with one of her arrows. This seemed to have deteriorated their relationship a little bit. Melric seemed pretty mad now. When he went over to attack the bandit, he completely knocked him out with a club to the head. Vladwin then pulled off an ambush, and a bunch of rocks completely collapsed on one of the enemy bandits. That ruined any chance they had at winning. After healing and repairing all of the damaged armor from the fight, I noticed that I got some pretty good loot. Melric also leveled up, so I increased his willpower. I also chose a new specialization perk, which gained us 1 valor point each time he engaged in combat. Captain Rovan then made his way into the cave, and I talked to him, getting my reward. It appeared that I got 20 points towards the main quest of this region. I also snagged a golden key off Bertham's body. There also appeared to be some iron ore in the mine, so I changed Vladwin's profession to a miner and started mining away at the iron ore. I then used a knowledge point to learn how to grill carp, crafted a camp chest which allowed me to sell items in when we were resting, and headed all the way back over to Stormcap. Once there, I bought out all of the hemp in the marketplace. After, I made my way over to the emissary, and I ended up collecting my 210 crowns, while also taking on a new mission. I was now hunting down some deserters who turned a mine into their lair. As I was leaving the inn, I noticed a potential recruit. His name was Ramras, and he was a thaumaturge. To be completely honest, I had no clue what that even was, but I decided to recruit him as I wanted to expand our mercenary company. I headed out of the village to a fishing spot. Before actually fishing there though, I used one of my knowledge points to unlock the crafting of saddlebags. I easily caught all 3 fish at the fishing spot and started heading towards the bandit's lair. On the way, I came across Old Wilbert's fishery. Of course, I met Old Wilbert inside. He was pretty nice. After I left the fishery, I finally used my sprint. I completely forgot that I even unlocked this ability. To be completely fair, it did feel a lot faster, but I accidentally oversprinted. This left me fatigued and slowed down for a short duration. With it now being rest time, I crafted a tent. The tent generates 1 extra valor point every single rest, so it was worth it to have. Funny enough, I had no idea that you could drag people around and objects throughout the camp. I finally dragged Ramras away from being in the corner by himself and put him next to the campfire where all the other companions were at. Unfortunately, only 4 companions could use the campfire at one time though. Since Ramras couldn't join at the campfire, I changed his profession to scholar. This allowed me to move him over to the monolith near our camp and start studying it. The next morning came fast. Apparently, over the rest time, I gained a knowledge point. I used it the next morning on researching an upgrade for the workshop. Ironically enough, I was camping out right next to the lair of the bandits that I was hunting. My companions entered into the cave, and I was finally able to test out Ramras's abilities. I used his main one called Explosive Concoction. It had a pretty large AoE but was rather unimpressive. It only dealt 1 damage to each enemy in it. I then retreated him behind the other allies. I was honestly disappointed that I recruited somebody so weak. I guess I'm gonna have to rely on the original 4. That's exactly what I did. I sent Melric in to distract and then used Vladwin to ambush. Ella and Gylard then dealt a bunch of damage. Oh yeah, and I got to use Gylard's new ability, Encouragement. This granted all allies in the AoE protection for 2 rounds. In the next round, Vladwin and Ella did all of the cleanup. After taking out 2 enemies though, I was prompted with the message that I could let the enemies retreat. I decided to let them, just because it looked like the cave was going to collapse on Ella and Ramras. I honestly had to get them out of there as quick as possible. That was an easy 230 crowns. Vladwin leveled up. I chose the Poisoner Specialization for him. This allowed him to use light armor and gave him the ability to throw a bomb that poisoned any enemies within its radius. With my current contract being completed, I decided to head over to the region quest. On the way over, I got hunted by bandits. This time, there wasn't only 2 or 3, there were actually 4, which was almost an even match. My strategy for this one was to split my forces into 2, Ramras and Ella on the flank, and Gylard, Melric, and Vladwin on the front. This battle started very uniquely. Basically, Gylard and Melric were taking on all 4 enemies at the same time. Ella and Ramras were finally able to help out a bit. I also finally figured out how to use the Thaumaturge class correctly. You have to inhale at least once, and once you've done that, you can then use the Purge ability. This attack deals damage up to 80% of your dexterity. It also affects any enemies within a certain radius of Ramras. It was finally Vladwin's turn. I sent him in behind one of the archers and took them out. I also was able to test out his Poison Vial ability. Gylard and Melric then finished off the rest of the enemies. I was pretty happy with the results of the battle because Gylard was the only one who needed to repair his armor. I then chose the Infantry Specialization for Ella, which allowed her to wear light armor and gave her a new barrage ability. Gylard also earns 1 Valor point each time he engages in combat now too. With the bandits now out of my way, I continued exploring, and I came across a shipwreck. There was a carpenter just hanging out at the dock. He told me that he would be able to repair this broken ship, but I would have to learn how to sail. There was absolutely no way that I was going to sail off into the sea when I haven't even completed the quest for this region yet. I figured that I would come back here sometime in the future. I headed northeast from the shipwreck, and that was when I came across a little farm. It looked like someone was murdered here, and apparently someone was. Some bandits came by and they killed the daughter of the couple who owned this farm. Apparently, the father went out and tried to get his revenge. I felt terrible for that family, but there wasn't much that I could do to help out. As I left their farm, I came across some animal tracks and discovered a new profession, huntsman. This profession was literally just hunting down animals. It's in the name. After I left the farm, I came across a mill. There was a guy roaming around the fields nearby it. He looked a little bit interesting, so I went to go check it out.
Lucilla, I'll kill them all!
Apparently, it was the dad who was looking for his daughter. It looked like he was doing more than just that though. He was absolutely covered in blood and was going mad. I decided that we should attack him, since it looked like he was going to be doing a lot more harm than good. Apparently, this crazy man was super good at fighting. He was able to take more than one turn each round. Once I found that out, I was a little bit concerned on how this battle was going to go. I tried employing my usual tactics. I ambushed the enemy. I even surrounded him. Unfortunately though, he was way too overpowered. His single attack did 24 damage to Melric. I decided that at this point, I didn't really have much of an option. So I retreated from battle, and everybody's armor got damaged. Everyone was also injured. And guess what? I was out of tools and almost out of medicine. We were literally so close to where we needed to travel to. I didn't want to risk anyone dying from injury though, so we were gonna have to head all the way back to Stormcap. I quickly rested so my troops weren't fatigued, and then Ramras told me that his ribs felt like they were broken, and he couldn't see clearly. So I gave him one of our last medicines. I started my journey all the way back over to Stormcap. I was low-key desperate at this point. I even stopped some refugees to see if they were selling medicine. On my way back, I came across old Wilbert's sheepfold. Wow, old Wilbert was really doing good for himself. He owned a fishery and a sheepfold. There was a refugee named Danae inside of it. Her and some other refugees were living inside of the sheepfold because they didn't have anywhere else to go. She pretty much asked me if I could go with her and ask old Wilbert if they could stay here. That seemed a little bit backwards, but hey, it was worth the conversation. I finally made it back to Stormcap after what seemed like forever. I immediately bought a whole bunch of medicine from the apothecary and then healed my troops. Right after, I went to the blacksmith and paid him to repair all of my companion's armors. Of course, I bought all of the tools that he had, at a discounted rate too, which was pretty nice. The emissary seemed pretty happy to see me. She paid me my reward for my previous contract, and of course had a whole bunch more for me. I ended up taking on another contract. This one was to hunt down some bandits who took over a watchtower. Since everything was all settled now, I decided to upgrade the workshop in my camp. This allowed me to dismantle low-level items into tools. That could be really helpful one day. It was now time to head back out. Luckily enough, the contract that I picked up could be done on the way to going and meeting the refugee leader. It wouldn't be fun if we didn't run into bandits. I came across 4 of them again, and this time I wanted to try out Ella's new ability. This barrage ability basically set up a little range that if any enemies moved into, she would attack. I got to see it in action right away too. It didn't take me long to finish off the bandits. We were now back on our way, but with better armor. My party was near the bandit tower. We just needed a rest, so we weren't fatigued when we went in to go attack it. The rest was especially good for Melric. He ended up pretty much glazing himself about the previous battle. I let him have it, since it didn't do any harm. Once I finally found the bandit tower, I also saw some bandits roaming around. I had to take them out before heading over to the tower. I was pretty surprised because there were only 3 bandits in this entire tower. I was honestly expecting a whole bunch of bandits swarmed up in one place. As always, I played Melric first and then Gaillard. It was a little bit weird though because there was one bandit that was separated from the rest. I didn't even realize it until it was his turn, but there was an archer bandit that was sneakily behind my troops. Things are not looking good for Ramras. Luckily enough, I was able to take out the other 3 enemies before Ramras could be critically injured or even worse. The tower was now mine to loot. Unfortunately, I didn't have a thief, and there was a chest that needed to be lockpicked. So I told Ella to change her profession and become a thief. It's a good thing she's a fast learner. The chest didn't really have anything good in it, except some fish. Thankfully enough, there was another chest that she could pick. This one had some more interesting items for sure. It was time to continue my journey to go and meet up with the refugee leader. I saw an abandoned tower on the way, and curiosity killed the cat. I came across a random man who was chained to the ground. So I decided to use Ella to lockpick his chains and set him free. Don't even ask me why I agreed to this, but I told him that I would escort him. Right as I departed from the abandoned tower, I got notified that having a deserter in my party could draw unwanted attention. This was such a good idea. Not even a full hour went by before some guards came running up to me.
Mercenaries, this man belongs to Count Lahart. Hand him over without resisting.
Since Count Lahart's men had some pretty cool armor, I decided I would go in and attack them. I'm not gonna lie, I started to get a little bit concerned after I saw one of these soldiers attack Gaillard. He attacked like 3 times in a row. It also seemed like these guys had a lot more health than the typical bandits I normally fight. That was for sure a tough round. Since Gaillard had taken so much damage, I sent Ramras over to heal him. I then used Ramras' cleanse ability, and it was pretty decent honestly. Gaillard managed to take out the enemy leader. Ella was then able to get a sneaky kill from the back in the next round, and Gaillard did it again. He took out another enemy. In the loot from that battle, I got a rare polearm, but sadly none of my companions could use polearms. More of Count Lahart's men approached me. I didn't want to keep dealing with this, so I decided to hand over the prisoner. It felt a little bit messed up handing him over. This was much more than just escorting him though. It seemed like we were going to have to continuously keep fighting off Count Lahart's men. I came across a caravan that was sparkling gold. This meant that they had a lot of good loot. I ended up buying some armor, which looked pretty epic. It was black and yellow, and it had plus 10 guard and plus 15 armor. I gave it to Melric, as it was pretty tanky. After that, my companions ate and took a rest. Ramras was really feeling good about himself. He felt like he was improving a lot. I had him teach the tricks that he learned to the rest of the group, and this got him even more experience. After he did, I unlocked level 2 of the Mysteries and Wisdom progression. This allowed me 1 knowledge point that I could use on a perk, which I ended up choosing just to scratch, making it so my companions would be less likely to get injured during a battle. I was back on the road again. It literally took me all day to travel back to where I was fighting that one crazy guy. I didn't plan on doing that again. I successfully didn't attack him and finally made it to the Haven. This was basically like the Refugee HQ. Once there, I met Fergus, the Refugee leader. He pretty much told me that he knew I sided with Tiltrin and not the refugees, but he offered me a mission that might change my mind. At least he thought so. I ended up accepting the mission. I was sent to a woodcutter's camp where he sent his men to go and get wood, but hasn't heard back from them in days. I had no clue how this was supposed to try and convince me to join the refugee side, but I was willing to give Fergus a chance. I arrived at the woodcutter's camp. The refugees there told me that the locals were harassing them and that they needed help. I watched the argument go down. The refugees were talking to the local farmers, and apparently the local farmers were claiming that these were sacred lands, and they were cutting down sacred trees. The villagers had said that the trees had been here for the longest time. Honestly, this mission was doing the opposite of what Fergus wanted. It was making me like the refugees even less. They pretty much came into these lands not knowing anything about them, started cutting down sacred trees, and when asked to stop, they raised arms. I obviously sided with the farmers. We outnumbered the enemy significantly. The 4 refugees were no match for the farmers plus my companions. Surprisingly enough, one of the farmers was the first one to take out an enemy. My companions and the farmers got galvanization when they did. This was because we were outnumbering the refugees by even more now. I then moved Ella into position and set up her barrage ability. That was when one of the enemies tried to run out of the AoE. Ella managed to hit a 20 on him, but he hit Ramras for 13. Gaillard and Vladwin each took out an enemy. I was then given the option to let the enemies flee, but I didn't let them. The farmer archer got another kill. This happened to be the last one. I was surprised because the farmers were a lot better at fighting than I thought they were going to be. I headed back to the woodcutters camp. Now it was run by the villagers, and the refugees no longer controlled it. I also personally met that farmer archer. Her name was Lorik. Funny enough, she gave me 15 beans for helping her and the farmers out. This wasn't your typical reward, I guess you could say, but it was better than nothing. I headed down from the mountain that the woodcutters camp was on. Once we made it to the bottom, my troops were pretty fatigued, so I gave them a chance to rest. Interestingly enough, I could now assign one of my companions the rank of captain. Vladwin apparently wasn't feeling well. His stomach was hurting. I told him to take some time and rest, which caused us to have plus 50% fatigue. We were barely rested because of it. I appointed Gaillard as the captain. He seemed to be the natural-born leader of the group. I also tested out the dismantling feature on my upgraded workbench. It worked as you expected it to. I then started my journey back to Stormcap. On the way, I took out some refugees, bought a pony from the stables that I came across earlier and got that free horseshoe, and finally made it back to the emissary in Stormcap. I happily collected 235 crowns from her. I then took on another 3 contracts. Since I now had 2 ponies, I bought the materials that I needed to build a hitching post. Of course, I then built it and placed it down. Each pony stationed at this hitching post got plus 10 carry capacity. My party could now carry over 200 pounds of items. I got another learning point, which I invested into yet another upgrade to the workshop. I ventured off again, away from the city and on to fulfilling some contracts. Of course, doing little side things on the way. I stumbled upon a random border crossing, apparently into a place called Gozenberg. Right outside of the gate, being confronted by guards, stood Lorik the Terrible. I had a contract to take him and his bandit group out actually, which didn't take too long, especially with the help of a guard. I was happy because I fulfilled my contract and got some really good armor. Ramras also leveled up from that battle. I ended up increasing his willpower and then choosing the mixologist specialization. When it's used on an enemy, it applies to poison, to corrosion bleeding, and burning to the target. I gave Melric the new armor we just looted, and then I gave Gaillard Melric's old armor, and then Ella Gaillard's old armor. My curiosity was killing me. I wanted to go check out the border crossing. Unfortunately, the border guard said I needed a border pass or pay 200 crowns to cross. I'll be coming back here later, once I have some more crowns. I noticed a disturbing looking little mound sitting right next to the border cross. It was a rat infestation. This thing was disgusting. Apparently, it could only be destroyed if you take out a giant mother rat, causing all of the smaller rats to flee. My companions located the broodmother. There were also some random looking structures that I'm assuming spawned even more little rats. Romulus started the attack with one of his bombs. He then inhaled and used his sensor to purify some of the rats. Unfortunately, it only hit one. Ella then took out that same rat with an arrow. A new rat quickly replaced that one, and then moved up to attack Gaillard. It was no match for Gaillard, to say the least. I tried sending in Melric and Vladwin to try and flank the mother, but there were already 2 rats a step ahead of me, ready for them. More rats emerged out of pretty much nowhere. We were now heavily outnumbered. I was for sure starting to get nervous. It seemed like the only thing that we could possibly do now is just rush the mother and hope that we could kill her before even more rats spawn. I had Ella and Ramras use their ranged abilities to try and damage the mother as much as possible. Some more minion rats came in and completely blocked off my troops, so we couldn't get any closer and deal damage to the mother. I was honestly a little bit desperate at this point. I used Vladwin's run ability, and then luckily got him right past the minion rats directly to the mother. He delivered the final blow, taking her out. We got some interesting loot to say the least. I honestly didn't even know if I wanted any of that, but I just took it all anyways. That battle finished off one of my challenges and got me to the power and glory progression level too. I unlocked strict rationing with the skill point that I received from it. This made my troop consume 3 less food each rest. Being in the area, I decided that I would finally go over and check out the jail I avoided earlier. I apparently could hand over a prisoner and reduce my wanted level. I bought a pair of chains from the warden too, just in case I ever needed to capture anyone. I then talked to the prisoners. I could even recruit them straight from jail, but I didn't think that recruiting companions from jail was the smartest move. I left the prison and then headed back to Stormcap. Once there, I went to the blacksmith and finally crafted my very first item. Well, I guess it was technically 4 items, but they were throwing hatchets. I wanted to be able to craft our own armor for the entire troop at one point. Obviously that was a plan for the future, but I needed to get Vladwin some experience in blacksmithing if I wanted it to come true. I then collected my reward from the emissary, bought a medium helmet that I gave to Melric, and then took out some refugees on the way to an area where 2 of my contracts were at. I then came across another 2 caravans that both had really good loot. Right as I was approaching the area that I needed to be in, I came across a little farm. I don't know why I always get myself into these things, but a woman was telling me that her husband went out with some friends and never came back, and she told me his last known location. I planned on helping her out at some point, but for now I was planning on just fulfilling my contracts. The first one was your typical easy bandit group. The second one, however, had me going on top of a very snowy mountain. There, I found the hunters I was looking for. I ended up having to convince them that it was way too dangerous to hunt up here and return to their families. Surprisingly enough, they actually listened. And then I continued to explore the same mountaintop I told them not to. The heavy snows fatigued my soldiers a lot quicker than just the regular grasslands. This forced me to stop and camp with my troops. I unlocked the ability to be able to assign a lieutenant now in my group. Melric also suggested during the rest that we take prisoners and hand them over to the guard to get extra crowns. This wasn't a bad idea, but I needed to buy more chains from the jail if I wanted to start doing it. Talking about crowns though, I collected some from the emissary. I then took on another 2 jobs and bought some good armor from a caravan. Let's just say Ella was really happy. To make up for buying the new armor, I immediately went over to the next contract target, completed it, and returned to the emissary. Weirdly enough, as I was resting, Ella said that she was sick of traveling around. This caused a drift in all of her relationships with everyone in the troop. It also made her hate Melric and him hate her. I was really hoping that she wouldn't get salty about it, but I made Melric the lieutenant of the group. So in other words, she was beefing with the second in command now. I approached my next contract target. Weirdly enough though, they had a boar and a wolf in their group. I was a little bit intimidated. The battle started like most others. At this point, I had a whole strategy that I was following play to play. Send Ramras in and attack as many enemies as he can with his bomb, throw his pathogenic concoction at the strongest enemy nearby, and then pull back to where the other troops were at. A lot of times, this would cause the enemies to waste one of their turns running over to attack my troops. I would then use Gylard to farm Valor points, and then move into attack. This would make it so we would have a lot of Valor points to use all of our special abilities on the team. After killing the first enemy or 2, it would then turn into a free-fall, and I basically was just using any of my troops to deal as much damage as they possibly could. I really thought that the wolf and boar were going to be a challenge, but not against this team. I got some pretty cool loot from that battle. The main item was a dagger for Vladwin. Apparently, whenever I attack with it, he can deal damage to up to 3 enemies if they're within a certain range. I was back near the border crossing into Gothenburg. This time though, I had crowns to spare. I paid a 200 crown fee, and now I could successfully cross the border.